Hi guys, how you doing? So we've got a couple of frontline stories today. One from myself and one from Barry. So here's my one. A couple of years ago, I was the chef at the Inspire Cafe in the Strand Centre in Dawlish, and I remember this one time very clearly. It was the run up to the lunchtime period, so it was just kind of before midday. Very busy. My busiest point of the day, really. Kind of getting the last bits of my prep done, setting the kitchen up for the lunchtime rush. And one of my volunteers comes up to me and says, "Look, this guy has just come in. I didn't see him go in. He's sat in the auditorium. Could you go and talk to him?" And I was like, worst time. Normally I wouldn't talk to anybody at that time. They'd have to come back later. And I was just there something to myself, I can't do this. I can't do this. I've got to focus on getting this, everything prepared and ready to go. And then I kind of had this strange feeling. I had this strange feeling of kind of being nudged, being pushed. And that it really did require me to go in and be with this man. So I did. I kind of went in, I sat with him, and he was in a very pitiful state. He couldn't control his body. He was kind of twitching and shaking. He was coming down from something, I guess. Could barely keep eye contact. He was kind of struggling with his speech. But he wasn't drunk or anything like that, or under the influence, or at least it didn't seem that way. Just his body was just kind of packing up, very sad. So I kind of asked him who he was, where he'd come from, and why he was here. And he basically come to the church. He was kind of just travelling through. He saw it as a place of refuge and had come in. I don't think he really expected anybody to talk to him. He wasn't asking for that. So I kind of sat with him and we spoke, and he really opened up. He kind of opened up about his life, how he had a daughter who he'd never really had a relationship with her, and how broken he was because of that. And I have to admit, I was sat there thinking, my goodness, what can I say? This man's life was... It sounded worthless, quite frankly. It really did. It sounded like there was just, and it sounded like that the climb it would have taken him to have got him out of that mire, and would have been just too steep. It would have been. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, do you know what? Now, this man might not have been a particularly good father to his child, but he still was a father. And that in itself is a blessing from God. God gave him his fatherhood. And so I explained this to him. I said, you know what? You may not have been the best dad in the world, but you are still a dad. And your child may not know you particularly well, but at least she knows that she has a father out there. And that in itself is a blessing. And you could just kind of see this kind of like, this weight lift off this man, and he started weeping. At which point I was like, my goodness, what do I do now? and I just put my arm around him, and that was really it. And we just sat there in silence, and then he kind of just got up, shuffled off, and I never saw the guy again. And that's really it, and what kind of struck me is that just a few kind words, a few kind of like just those kind of that very that basic hope. And what I mean by basic hope is that the most baseline thing as a father is the fact that you're just a father, let alone whether you're a good one or a bad one or anything else. Is the fact that you are a father, and that that in itself was that little bit of hope that maybe that man just needed to hear at that time. So there we go. Okay then. Okay, so our second frontline story then today comes from Barry, and this is what he's emailed through. So, from Barry. As we start to get out more, there are great opportunities for us to connect with relative strangers on common ground. Before you go out, ask God to give you an opportunity to ask people how they have fared throughout lockdown as a conversation starter. Here's an example of how easy God makes it for us. For some reason unbeknown to me at the time, I took a slightly different route from my house down to the Sheldon Bakery on Wednesday. Halfway into the village, a voice in the garden said, "Hello, Barry." And a shouting resident whom I only slightly knew appeared. I asked her how she was, and she poured out how she had lost her mum during lockdown and was now shielding her father, who had mild dementia. They had all had a rough time, so I just listened, and in the end I said I would pray for them all, and that she was now on my list. Then she said, "No one's ever offered to pray for me before." So I had no choice, did I? I just prayed a blessing of peace over her and her family, there and then. God makes it amazingly simple for us. So ask God to give you an opportunity to ask people how they're fared in lockdown as a conversation starter. And Barry adds to this as well by saying that, do you know what? This woman's father had also passed away recently, and he had the opportunity to attend that funeral with her. And he barely knew the father either. So there we go. Very inspirational. Thanks, Barry. Great stuff. So there we go for another week. So I encourage you to send your stories through. I love to read them, and I know that people out there love to listen to them also. Let's be inspired by how God is working on our front lines. And remember, they don't have to be about something that's happened that week. They can be something that happened years ago, a long, long time ago. Just kind of get those stories in. Just remind us of how much God is working on these front lines of ours. So there we go. Blessings. Bye-bye.